What are like the oldest Indonesian records or bands?
What is it?
What is it? I don't know. I'm asking you.
About punk rock?
Like main for the masses, it's about Mick Foley, right?
Yeah.
So it's, Mick Foley is pretty much identical with hardcore wrestling, thumbtacks and barbed wire, Hell in a Cell, and that kind of matches, right? So are you into like violent wrestling type too, like UVW? Have you ever heard that?
I'm not. I'm Derek, who plays drums in Nightbirds, is a big wrestling fan. Joe, who plays bass in Nightbirds and was in the Ergs, he's a huge wrestling fan. I'm the only one that's not really a big wrestling fan. I like it, but I just never got into it the way that those guys did. And Joe wrote the song Made for the Masses. I especially like Mick Foley, and the point of the song was just kind of about how when you get into something, you put your entire self into that thing. And Mick Foley is a pretty good example of somebody who was passionate about wrestling. And I mean, the guy just completely destroyed himself to do what he loved and for the audience and for the adrenaline rush and everything that it brought. And I think that there's a lateralness to punk rock and the kind of music that we like and that we play, just kind of laying it all on the line, in a performance kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm not jumping on barbed wire, but I am a big Mick Foley fan.
Talking about Mick Foley, so I'm pretty sure you were into the WWF into its heydays, right?
I liked. I mean, when I was like really little, I watched wrestling, but that was like pretty much as far as I got into wrestling.
So like you're not into like that kind of stuff of wrestling, like. All right.
Yeah, I don't know much about it.
That's cool. So let's talk about like something you're really into. What about horror movies?
I do like horror movies.
Yeah, I mean like midnight movies, the 7-inch. I have it in my home. Like all the songs are pretty much referencing other horror movies, right?
Yeah.
So like Bad Biology and then Eraserhead. I heard it in midnight movies, and then.
Yeah, probably. So, yeah. I mean, the main thing. So Frank Henenlotter, the guy who made Brain Damage, Frankenhooker, Bad Biology, Basket Case. He and Mike Hunchback became friends years ago, and we just got really obsessed with those movies. They're very like New York, New Jersey based. They're totally off the wall, but they're like awesome. Great movies, really cool looking movies. And we wrote a couple songs about Frank and about Frank's movies. And then we took the picture for that record on Frank's roof, the roof of his New York City apartment, with Belial from the first Basket Case.
Basket Case, yeah.
It was just kind of an homage to Frank and his movies.
Like talking about horror movies, like you're really into them, right? But what are the most unsettling horror movies you've ever watched?
Unsettling movies?
Yeah,
I'm not even a huge fan of like the shocky. I like the shticky,
B-movie
trauma,
stuff.
Frank kind of stuff, just off the wall, stupid. I mean, I like scary movies too, but I'm not into like weirdo slicing eyeballs for the sake of trying to just make people feel weird. I mean, sometimes if I'm in the mood, but that's definitely not like my thing, really.
So, is it safe to say, like, are you more into like the more fictional and I guess bizarre things instead of like the slicer things, the slash stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely more just ridiculous, off the wall stuff like that. I mean, specifically Frank. I really love his movies, and Mike got me into all those, and they're just a really good balance of comedy and horror and just like, again, just ridiculous off the wall, people getting run over by lawnmowers and blood spraying all over the place and stupid shit like that.
But have you ever watched like, some Asian B movies like Genia Pig? Have you ever watched that?
Not really. I mean, I
Really?
know of that stuff, but again, it's not really my cup of tea.
So you're kind of like picky about that thing, right?
A little bit. Do you like that stuff?
Not that much, but I watch a lot of movies like that, especially in Japan. Like Japan produce all these fucked up movies, like many things that kind of make my belly turns into jelly. I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, yeah. No, I got a weak stomach, especially as I'm getting older. I can't hang with the toughest stuff.
That's cool. Okay, let's move on. I mean, like, let's talk to music. And you got into Fat Wreck, right? I mean, like, from the second album, I guess.
Third
The
album.
the other side, or like,
So
Born in.
Grave Mistake did The Other Side of Darkness and Born to Die in Suburbia, and then the third album was Mutiny at Muscle Beach, and that was the first album that Fat did. But before that, Fat put out the Main for the Masses single.
Can you tell me the story about how cool you get into Fat into Kentucky?
Yeah, I mean, somebody that worked at the label, I heard that they liked our band, so we sent them demos for what was going to be the Born to Die in Suburbia album, just not thinking that they would really care because we don't really necessarily fit in with a lot of the bands that they release.
Hey Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're freezing again.
Let me do what I did last time.
Okay. Okay, so Fat Wreck. Tell me the story about it.
So one of the people at the label we heard liked us. They were going down to the Gainesville Fest in Florida. We were playing, and I think we ended up shooting the shit. We gave them demos for what was going to be the Born to Die in Suburbia album, and they really liked it, and they wanted to put it out. But we had already committed that album to Grave Mistake, who did our first album and who did the Fresh Kills album for us. So we talked with everybody and decided that Fat was going to do the single for the album, because Maimed for the Masses is also on Born to Die in Suburbia. So yeah, they put out, which is kind of weird. They weren't going to do the proper album, but they helped us promote it by putting out the single for it, which I thought was really cool because they really didn't have very much to benefit from helping us sell an album that they weren't going to be releasing. So after we put that out, we were at Punk Rock Bowling a few years ago, and Fat Mike was there and asked if we wanted, was like, hey, let's we were supposed to do the record last time. What's up? Can we do the next one? So yeah, I mean, we had like half of Mutiny at Muscle Beach was written at that point. We weren't sure what we were going to do, so we were like, yeah, cool. We went home and wrote the rest of the record, and yeah, they ended up releasing it.
Fat also did the Who Killed Mike Hunchback, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they put out a few things for us. We did a 12-inch EP last year, called Roll Credits. And,
Roll Credits.
Yeah, Fat put that out as well. So we've been on the label for, I guess, probably 5 years, something like that.
So, like, talk about Who Killed Mike Hunchback. Are there more songs or demos from your albums that will see the light of the day?
Probably. We do proper demos for everything. So we have like a whole different version of the album Born to Die in Suburbia, and we record it like the studio that we recorded Killer Waves and Midnight Movies and all that stuff. The first studio that we started going to, that's where we still go to do the demos for our albums. So we have a whole demo album of Born to Die in Suburbia. We have a whole demo album of Mutiny at Muscle Beach. Whole demo album for Roll Credits. Whether that stuff ever comes out or not, I don't know. We don't record it with the intent of being released. We record it so then we can listen back to it, see what sucks, see what's good, see what we want to change. Usually things stay pretty close to how they are, but there's some different stuff. So maybe it would be fun to release that at some point if people gave a shit. I don't know.
Because like I personally love the cut from the Born of Man and Woman from the Michael Killed Mike Back. It sounds better than the album. I gotta say, I'm really sorry to say that, but it sounds really better than the album.
Yeah, well, that one's actually different. So when we did the first album, we weren't doing like full proper demos at that point, but Mike had a way of when he wrote a song, he would do demos, and all of his demos sounded like that. And then when Joe would write a song, his demos would sound like something else. So we weren't doing like proper full band demos at that point. We were kind of just winging it in the studio. But we started doing that after that album. But I agree with you. I think the Who Killed Mike Hunchback version is cooler sounding than the album version. There's also another version of that song that I think is the best version of it.
Really?
That was an outtake when we did Other Side of Darkness. We did a really fast version of it because we didn't know if we wanted it to be really fast or like a little slower. And we ended up putting the slower one on the album. But I always thought the really fast one was really cool. And we had that whole album mixed and mastered at a different place, and we were ready to like release it. And then Joe and I decided at like the 11th hour that we didn't like the way it came out. So there's a whole different version of that album that never came out. But I think the outtake of Born a Man and Woman from that never came out is the best version of that song.
I'm so stoked to hear another version because like there are 3 versions of my favorite song.
Well, remind me. If I can find it, I'll send it to you.
That's cool. So, like I see a lot of posts on your, Facebook. You're an avid record collector, right?
I am, yeah.
Yes, I'm just wondering, like, what's the most expensive stuff you've ever paid for in your collection?
Most expensive that I've paid for?
Yeah.
A few, maybe, between 12 and 15 years ago. I guess it was probably like 15 years ago. I was working at a screen printing shop, and I was still living at home with my parents, and I didn't really have bills. So I would get my check at the end of the week, and then I would just go blow it on records. And there was a guy in New Jersey that had 2 copies of the first Misfits single, the Cough Cool single. And he had 2 of them, and I bought them both. And I think I bought them for $900 each. So it was like $1,800 for the pair. But what's fucking crazy is today, like 2 hours ago, one of those sold for $10,000.
No way.
So it's like,
man, that's insane.
It's stock market shit. So
the Misfits first records, right? And then and anything else? Like below like 500 or like 900 below that number?
Yeah, I mean, I've done that kind of quite a bit. But usually it was when something, if I feel like I'm getting a decent buy on it, or if a friend is selling their collection. I don't usually buy on eBay very much. I don't really buy on Discogs very much. I usually just buy, when a friend is trying to sell a collection of records, I usually try to buy the whole collection. I'll keep a couple things, and then I'll try to sell some things to make my money back. Because I don't have a ton of money to go out and just buy super expensive. Again, I have, a 6-year-old daughter, and I'm a booking agent. I book like 16 North American bands, so I don't make a ton of money. So I can't just be like, dropping tons of cash on records. But I do like that stuff, and if I can get a decent deal on it, I do try.
I'm wondering, like, are your records only strict into like US or like Europe stuff? Do you have like any Asian or like obscure stuff from other part of the world?
I have some Japanese records. I have, like the early Gauze and Gizm and Lip Cream and stuff like that. I have some Australian records, stuff from all over Europe, from like Scandinavia and obviously London and, maybe not Germany, some cool like French records, stuff like that. What are like the oldest Indonesian records or bands?
What is it?
What is it? I don't know. I'm asking you.
About punk rock?
Yeah.
Indonesian didn't really produce vinyls for punk rock until like 2000. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought about that stuff, but when we toured in Mexico, I asked the guy, I was like, are there like, in the early 80s were Mexican bands putting out self-released records, Minor Threat was putting out their own records in Washington, D.C. in 1980. Was that happening, or 1981? I was like, was that happening in Mexico? And he was like, no. He's like, the first records that we produced here were like 1989, 1990. And I was lucky enough to score a couple cool things when I was there, just kind of as a souvenir. But I never really thought about it. The fact that maybe there wasn't vinyl production or bands releasing proper albums in different parts of the world. So the earliest stuff is like early 2000s.
Yeah, I guess so. But some other punk bands like started in 80s, 89, I guess 88, but they didn't have like vinyl record. They only had CDs and tapes because like tapes was so big back then.
Right.
Yeah, there was this band. Yeah, there was this band called.
Right?
Still, because like it's cheap and it's easy to do instead of vinyls. We have to press it in America or Canada. So it's quite expensive for us. Like this first band called Antiseptic. It's like probably the first punk band in Indonesia.
Okay.
They even don't have any vinyl release until now.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, like newer bands only do vinyls these days.
But that band, they're called Antiseptic.
Antiseptic, yeah.
Do they have like early cassette releases?
Yeah, they do. They have.
Whoa, that's cool. I want to get one.
You should come over here and then I'll show you some.
Yeah, that'd be cool.